Hey, welcome back to Wizard Kid. Last time we covered, I think, the Christmas chapter, in which I got very alarmed at the revelation that Crookshanks was hired to go buy a gift for Harry somehow.
Yes.
And then Harry started his Patronus training with Lupin so that the Dementor situation wouldn't repeat itself in the upcoming Quidditch match.
And then
Today we've
everybody
got
started hating Hermione.
yes, because Crookshanks probably killed Scabbers, it seems. Um, Today we have said Quidditch match, followed by Harry getting into some trouble. Um,
Basically, yeah. I will also state, for anybody keeping track, at this point it is very unlikely that we will finish this book by at like the usual start time for the next one being July 31st, but we're just going to roll with it and just
yeah,
release
we'll
these
see how it
whenever.
goes.
Um, so, yeah. Should I just start us off then?
Yeah, you have the first note.
Okay, so it's been a couple days, but basically, Rachel is at the circus, and despite it being the seventh book, they're still doing this stupid shit where they're like, "I need to save animals," so she tries to save these elephants. Okay, I've been rereading Animorphs. What can I say? So, yeah, basically, it starts off with the aftermath of uh, Ron being, incredibly mad at Hermione and Harry not really wanting to get involved, but kind of siding with Ron, and she, of course,
Yeah,
doesn't appreciate that and is kind of just being, ostracized, and
yeah.
it
We'll
kind of
get more of an
sucks.
insight into how Hermione's
Um,
feeling later in the chapter.
yeah, it's, I mentioned in an earlier one of these that, I said, like, it's a rare instance of her being wrong, and there was a comment saying, like, it's actually not that rare, she's kind of like this a lot, and I agreed, and this is just kind of more of the same. But it's like it is just really shitty timing because it was like it was the what would you call it? Like the double gut punch of
Davis.
like there was like the firebolt thing. She was just trying to do the right thing, and ultimately it was like no harm done. But it was like just when they were about to kind of forgive her for that, then the Scabbers thing happened, and it's like well, um,
Yeah.
and so early on they like well I don't remember when this is established, but later they go to see Hagrid, and it's shown that you know even with her going through this emotional stress, she still has all the million classes, and is also the only one helping Hagrid with the Buckbeak case, and she's just being stretched really
Yeah.
thin, and most of this is happening off screen because
Though
it's
questionably so, considering she can just kind of rewind time as many times as she wants because time travel mechanics. But we'll get to that later.
yeah.
Um, I will also say it's actually interesting because I didn't really remember the whole back to back Hermione kind of issues being so prominent in this book because I think they basically just skip it in the movie, right? Like
Well, in the
Hermione
movie, he
basically,
doesn't even get the firebolt until the last 30 seconds
yeah,
anyway, so
right.
yeah, I remember there being a lot of background Ron and Hermione snapping at each other,
Bickering,
but
yeah. But it's not
I don't
so
think
much to
it's a
the
big
forefront.
focus.
We don't have this whole section of like Hermione basically not talking to either of them hardly at all. Um, but yeah, so Fred and George are basically trying to cheer Ron up about Scabbers, and they're like, you're always saying he was looking really weak and like he was gonna die at any point anyway. Like, he just he got killed instantly, so he probably didn't have to go through any pain, and that doesn't help. And they're like, you were always complaining and saying he was completely useless, and he's like, bit goyle for us once, and Harry was like, yeah, that's true. And I just something about that little exchange made me laugh.
Yeah, well, the thing is, like, Ron didn't even say anything about that after. Well, actually, yeah, no, yeah. What happened was, um, Ron tried to bring that up as like a reason why oh, he wasn't that bad. He did this one thing, and then Fred is just like, yes, his finest hour.
Yeah.
Um,
But even before that, I was laughing at just Harry going, that is true. Like,
um. So yeah, the whole the big thing that's going on now is Quidditch match against Ravenclaw is coming up, and so Harry has the Firebolt back, and he, eagerly is ready to try it out for the first time. So he gets out for practice, and Madam Hooch is like gawking over this thing along with the rest of the team. You kind of have a thing there.
Yeah, I enjoy her ramblings about it because she's like, oh, these new handles remind me of the silver arrows, and like, oh, Nimbus runes are really good, but they tend the one downside I have to say is they tend to have this drag that develops, and just it's nice. It feels like realistic dialogue for like an enthusiast to know all this random little stuff and have this background with it.
I've addressed this before, but it's still just hilarious to me that they have this industry of these sport brooms. And it's like, if you want to have these things that you can fly around on, why the hell are they still brooms? Like, I think originally they started that way because they needed it to be something inconspicuous, like if a muggle saw it like in the house or whatever. But I assume that is no longer a problem. It's just, I guess it's just out of tradition at this point.
Yeah, I mean, some of them look very little like brooms from what I remember.
Yeah, because they've got, like, little things to put your legs on. Like, some of them do, at least. And I think the bristles are often just kind of like, a big clump. It wouldn't even sweep anything. Like, it's... I don't know. It's very derpy.
Yeah.
So, they're talking about the upcoming match, and Cedric says, like...
Is it Cedric? You mean Oliver?
Oh, yeah, Oliver Wood. What the fuck was I talking about Cedric for? Yeah, Wood mentions that he's just kind of talking about, like, the Ravenclaw Seeker is Cho Chang, and Harry hasn't met her yet. So this is our first mention of Cho. The fan base seems to have a number of issues with her. Most of them are not really relevant at this point, but the main one that, like, I guess we could get into now is just people claim that her name is shitty, and, like, Rowling didn't try hard enough to make a convincing name, and it's, like, too stereotypically Chinese or something. Funnily enough, I looked up, I was looking into this, and I couldn't really find any definite source. Like, I've seen things like, okay, Cho is usually used for this, Chang is usually used for this, but apparently the person who did the translation for the Japanese books was told by Rowling that Cho was actually intended to be Korean. And the names are leaning more Chinese than Korean, so I don't know. But it's one of those things, like, do we really have to get up in arms over this? Like, there was no animosity here. It's like, come on.
It's a little silly sounding. Like, I think there's more of a point with Anthony Goldstein, but he's not very relevant, so we don't need to get into him. With Cho, it's like, it sounds silly and not like a realistic name, but I would argue that there's other names like that in the series from, like, Western regions. Like,
I mean, that's the thing, is this series is full of these weird alliterative names, and this is...
who's the fucker in the 7th book who's, like, the asshole that had the locket at one point? He has a ridiculous name, doesn't he?
Someone who had the locket?
Or I think.
Because, I mean, I think the only ones who had the locket were Umbridge, Mundungus...
Mundungus Fletcher, that's what I was thinking.
Okay. Yeah, his name is horrible.
Yeah, like, to me, it's no worse than that, I feel like that's not a point I really see people bring up, is, like, it's kind of supposed to be this whimsical, fantastical place with people with silly names sometimes.
Right. If anything, it just reminds me of Trixie Tang.
Yeah, kind of.
But
I think people wouldn't complain if it was just the Chang part. I think it's the Cho and the Chang back-to-back that
maybe
just kind of sounds off. I don't know.
But anyway, whatever. Yeah, enough talking about her, because we don't even see her yet. Like,
I forgot she was a year older than Harry. They mentioned that she's a 4th year.
Yeah. Never really comes up. Apparently in the movies, they aged her down by 1 year. I don't know why this needed to happen, but yeah. So yeah, he's just, they're playing, they let the snitch out, and Harry catches it in, like, fucking 2 seconds. There's a part where it says, Harry turned the Firebolt. Harry turned it so sharply that Alicia Spinnet screamed. That stood out to me. It's like, why? Like, this must have been a very, I'm just imagining, like, the Caleb City video where he's, like, in a game, and he's like running one direction and then instantly snaps the other direction. Just like this unnatural, just fucking instant 180.
That'd be pretty good.
But yeah, everybody's like in super high spirits over this because of how quickly he catches it, and they're like, "Oh man, we're gonna win for sure." And this really just kind of illustrates further how it is unfair that the school games let the kids use their own equipment, because it just causes this huge divide. It's like skill is still an element, but like, come on.
Yeah, because they keep mentioning, like, I think when Oliver's talking about Cho, he's like, she is a really good seeker. Like I've seen her play. She's definitely very skilled, but your broom's better, so we're probably fine. Like he doesn't even mention Harry's skill, like in that sentence. He's just like, yeah, she rides a Comet 260. Like, don't worry about it. And
the skill of spotting a small gold thing and catching it, which is just a very weird skill to have.
Yeah.
Have I brought up that it's weird to me that he's supposed to be this prodigy of that and has poor eyesight?
I was thinking that during this chapter. I'm like, it's kind of odd to me that even with his glasses, especially when the weather is so often bad. Like if you've ever worn glasses, just how much rain like fucks them up and makes it hard to see them. You would have to have like, I don't know, a cloth on him, or are you normally allowed to have your wand during Quidditch? I know he does in this chapter because of the.
Well, in a previous chapter, Hermione had to waterproof his glasses.
Right. Yeah. I guess that's probably a standard thing that they do, but yeah.
I mean, obviously not, because she had to do it for him. But
no, I mean like in the professional,
maybe.
Like, speaking of the professional thing, like it makes sense that in the actual championship that the teams would have to basically have their own funds to pay suppliers for good equipment. To an extent, it makes sense that that's a factor. Right. But the school stuff really should be standardized, because you're gonna just consistently get like in the last book when Lucius bought the Slytherin team, the new Nimbus 2001s, like for the whole team. You're just gonna get that all the time. Whoever has a rich dad or family member or whatever that is willing to dump a bunch of money into it is just going to have this massive advantage, and I don't know why.
Yeah, and I don't remember specifically, but I'm pretty sure there was a thing at some point, possibly even earlier in this book. We've taken so long between chapters, I don't remember that. If somebody doesn't own their own broomstick, they can use kind of like one that the school has, and these things are ancient and shitty and like slow and constantly drifting to one side.
Good shit.
So,
yeah.
Ron came to the practice just so he could ride the Firebolt, because Harry wanted to try to cheer him up a little bit, and
while they're practicing, Mana Hooch falls asleep for some reason.
Yeah. But as they finish up and are heading back, and Harry thinks he sees the Grim, but it's actually just Crookshanks, who just has free reign over the school, apparently.
Yeah. Which does... I know we talked last time about like how Crookshanks, has interacted with Sirius, and that's how the Firebolt ended up with Harry. Like, is Crookshanks continuing to like help Sirius get around? Is that kind of the implication?
Maybe. Like,
because I have some questions about that later in this chapter, but we'll get to that.
Yeah.
At this point, what I was thinking was, because they mentioned that Harry, like, basically hits a stride and power walks back to the castle without turning his head. And I'm like, I'm actually kind of surprised that his response to being scared by the, mistaken Grim sighting is to avoid looking left or right, because when I'm scared, I tend to look around, more than usual and be really skittish. I guess it kind of makes sense, because he's more scared of seeing it than of, like, being attacked by something.
Yeah, sorry, I think I bumped the mic.
But the thing is that he already did see the Grim and is, like, fine. Like, I don't think seeing it again will change anything. But
I feel like I get it, because a lot of times, it's the equivalent of hiding under the covers to avoid the monster. It's not actually going to help, but it's like, if I don't see it, I'm fine.
I was always different. Like, as a kid, I was like, I didn't sleep. How do I put this? When I would go to bed as a kid, I wouldn't close my eyes. Like, they would naturally close when I fell asleep, but until then, I'd be just eyes wide open, staring at my ceiling, and occasionally, depending on the angle of my head, like some of the rest of my room, because I wouldn't want to close my eyes because I was scared that as soon as I closed them, I would be like vulnerable. Like I wanted to see the room constantly.
That is weird. I'd be curious to know like how common that is compared to the thing that I said, because I feel like the hiding under the covers thing is at least the more popular thing in like media or whatever.
Yeah, maybe.
And that's kind of how I am. Like if I'm just randomly skittish, if I watched like some spooky shit before I had to go to bed, and I'll just not want to. If I have to like go out into go to the bathroom or something, I'll try to do it with my eyes closed, because I don't want to see anything like in my peripheral vision that I know is fine, but like my frantic brain will interpret as a threat. Because I don't want to get startled by things.
That's probably more logical, but for me, I'm like, if there's a genuine threat, like I want to be ready. So if I'm scared and I need to go to the bathroom,
that's the thing is like, if you know that there isn't a threat, but you're worried that like you're going to jump at something anyway, that's kind of what it is for me. It's like I don't want to get scared by like a fucking towel. So I won't look at the towel.
Yeah.
But there was anyway, my next note here is so stupid, but yeah, just the next day, it's it's the day of the match, and in the morning, apparently the Slytherin team is unaware of. I mean, they're not even playing Slytherin, but yeah, nobody's aware of this the Firebolt yet, and everybody's like fawning over it, except Slytherin, of course, is because everybody follows Draco's every word for some reason, and he hates Harry, so they all hate Harry. He comes over and he's an asshole, and Percy is like, I've put a bet that you're going to win against Penelope. And then there's a sentence that just says, and he bustled off to join her in a piece of toast. Like, something of, what do you mean? Like, are you sharing a single piece of toast? Like, what the fuck is this wording?
No, it means that he is joining her in having a piece of toast, as she is.
It was just worded really weird.
Yeah, I guess. So, he's preparing for the match. And before the match, it mentions that he's wearing a t-shirt underneath his Quidditch uniform, and he puts his wand in his t-shirt in case he needs it later. What? What do you mean he puts it in his t-shirt?
Because later on it says that he pulls it out, and I'm pretty sure what's happening here is he's wearing this. He has a shirt, and then he has the robe above the shirt, and the wand is just between his chest and the shirt. And I don't know what the point is, other than I guess the shirt is tighter than the robes, so it's held in place better.
I have to assume the Quidditch uniform over the top of everything is compacting his shirt to him, and so it keeps it there. But
I guess
it just
it was a little weird. Of course, okay, so because I'm an asshole, I had to point this one out. So there's just a line from the book. The Ravenclaw team, dressed in blue, were already standing in the middle of the field. Their seeker, Cho Chang, was the only girl on their team. And my response to this will only make sense if you are well-versed in, my personal fucking life history that I've shared in various videos throughout the years. It's just, It's just surprising to me, because usually girls are much swifter than boys.
I was basically just a grandma being sexist, right?
Yeah, to go on a tangent, I've explained it at some point before, but fuck if I remember when. It was just when I was invited to the gifted program for third grade, there was this... I don't know what you'd call it. It's not an orientation, but it was just this day where we would kind of all go there. The parents would mingle, the kids would mingle, or whatever. Apparently she didn't go with. I don't remember, but yeah, there was just some comment she made. She's just it's strange that it was mostly boys there, because girls are always just so swifter, and I'm like, well. And for one thing, the word swifter is just a weird choice, because it's very clearly not wanting to just straight up say oh yeah, girls are smarter, but it's obvious that that's what she meant, and was just trying to dampen the blow. but it kind of fucked me up for most of my life because I just kind of accepted that as fact. And it's just like, yeah, okay, I guess guys are just always dumb. And then, TV doesn't really do much to say otherwise, so, okay.
Yeah, I grew up around a lot of, like, man hatred as well. Which probably wasn't meant to be taken all that seriously, but it imprinted on me. And I took it the opposite way. I violently rejected it, but I got pissed off about it, and, like... Anyway, moving on. On this same note, I'm actually a little surprised that Quidditch is like a mixed gender sport to begin with. Not because it should be, because like, yeah, like it's usually just a standard for sports. Which I don't remember how that came about. I don't really know my sports history. Modern day kind of research has shown it's better for like weight classes to like make weight classes make more sense as like a distinction than dividing sports by gender. But
Probably.
given that the series is usually kind of a lot of stuff is similar to just how it works in the Muggle world. I'm kind of surprised that they don't have like a separate league, but maybe it wouldn't be large enough because there's the Wizarding community is pretty
Yeah,
small.
because I mean, I know jack shit about sports either, but I imagine that it was probably just the type of thing where most of them were men only, and then as we approach the modern age and women are like, hey, we want to do this stuff too, they kind of just had to form their own to not get completely outclassed, and it just kind of hasn't.
But they wouldn't be, that's the thing.
It depends on the sport. Like,
for most, it just depends on weight class. You can get, the overlap is pretty strong. Like, when you get up to the very top players, the very best at one particular sport, might be more likely to be a guy, but the overall, like, composition is going to be mixed.
Fair enough. It could also be an aspect of the men have been training more and are more likely to be in the higher tiers.
There might be some sociological factors there.
As far as Quidditch goes, there's very little physical about this other than, I mean, you have to throw a ball, you have to swing a bat at a different ball, and you have to be able to, take a ball to the arm without fucking dying.
I mean, if you want to talk about physicality, like, chess is gender segregated.
For whatever reason.
And they've banned trans women from the women's league of that, because, we definitely have an advantage in chess.
Oh.
Anyway, moving on.
So, like I mentioned before, this is Harry's first time seeing Cho, other than, possible just random background character moments. And it mentions that, she looks at him and smiles, and Harry feels a strange feeling in his stomach. Like, let me find the...
It has a weird phrasing. It's like, it's different from where, anxiety over a match usually sits. It's in a different place.
I need to find the exact term for this, because it was great. Okay, yeah. He felt a slight lurch in the region of his stomach that he didn't think had anything to do with nerves.
Right,
So basically he got a boner and doesn't know what it is.
I don't think... I wouldn't describe that as in his stomach. It's like maybe...
It's... I mean, here's the thing. Not to get way too fucking TMI here, but when I was a little kid, 9 or whatever... and that would happen, I was always like, oh, stomach feels weird. Like, I didn't realize, where it was coming from, because I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, I don't really remember what my experience with that was. So I can't comment.
But yeah, so this is, I said this is the surprise appearance from the monster in Harry's pants, which we'll be seeing in Half-Blood Prince.
We'll be very acquainted with that pseudo-character.
We also have our first mention of, everybody's favorite side character, Roger Davies, the head of the Ravenclaw Quidditch team. Aside from him being the head of this team, he does show up a few more times in the future, and pretty much every time he does, he's furiously locking lips with someone. He somehow managed to date Fleur in the Yule Ball, and there's just scenes of them making out in the bushes and Snape making them fuck off, which we see again in Deathly Hallows when we flash back to Snape and Dumbledore arguing, and they're just there off to the side while they're talking.
That's so good.
And then also when Harry goes to the coffee shop with Cho for Valentine's Day in the 5th book, he is making out at the table next to them with some unknown blonde girl. So this is just his character.
Excellent. So they mention at this point they've gone over like what's so special about the Firebolt already. This is the first mention of it having an auto break. I'm wondering how that works. Like, does it detect when you're about to hit an object and then just suddenly stops you? Because I don't know if that would be that much better than hitting it. I mean, probably, but
maybe a little bit.
But also, like, how sensitive is it? Because Harry does these like stupid Daredevil like violent turns and dives all the time. Like, you'd think it might actually get in the way of that. So I'm a little curious about the specifics. And speaking of dives. He also mentions here, like, dives were my specialty, so I guess it's not mine because it's third person, but it says the dives were Harry's specialty. So he's trying to, do a lot of those to throw Cho off. And I'm not exactly sure what makes somebody better or worse at dives. I guess having the reaction time to, like, not hit the ground
at the right time.
Yeah.
Helps if you have a broom that's way better than the person chasing you, I guess. But yeah.
It's a pull-out game joke here, I guess, but...
This is a super minor thing. This was just me getting distracted by weird writing, and maybe it's not weird, but, sorry. Yep, that noise is definitely showing up in the video. Awesome. Okay, I found it. Like I said, this is super minor, but there's a sentence where it's just like, just as Katie succeeded in scoring the first goal of the match, blah, 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 and then 2 or 3 paragraphs later, we cut to Lee's commentary, Gryffindor leads by 80 points to 0, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, that sentence was used to indicate the passage of time, I guess, and it just... I was like, did I miss something? How did we get so far ahead? But, yeah, it was just kind of weird.
I mean, I assumed, the points are being scored in the background while this other stuff with Harry is going on, so I don't even think it's that, like...
Yeah, it's not like we need a play-by-play of everything. Like, who gives a shit? It was just, the way it was worded threw me off.
At this point, it mentions that, like, Cho keeps crossing over Harry's, like, path to, like, force him to turn and stuff. And at various points she starts, like, tailing him, like, flying right behind him.
Yeah, she's basically not even bothering to look for the snitch and is just waiting until Harry sees it and then trying to, like, fuck him up.
Interrupt him, and, yeah.
And, there's a scene, like... I mean, not a scene, but basically a line. I didn't even make note of it, but there's a point where, Wood is just like, this is no time to be a gentleman. Knock her off your broom if you have to. And I remember that coming back in one of the later books.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think Harry, like, quotes that to her when they're briefly dating.
Good. But yeah, so eventually Harry gets it.
Yeah, the game continues with, not much going on. It's very evident that these matches are not interesting, and we're just trying to skip through it. And Lee is only commentating on the Firebolt and nothing else. And
yeah, and McGonagall keeps getting mad at him.
Yeah, so he catches the snitch when they're like 30 points ahead or whatever. So they win and. Yay. And but there's a scene where like there's a couple things here. So first of all, it says like, everyone's like ecstatic that they won, and all 3 of the girls on the team kiss Harry, and I'm like, oh, hello.
I assume it's just a peck on the cheek.
I know, but it's just, I'm wondering how the monster felt about that one. Then apparently Fred like puts him in a headlock or something, and then it says that like as a mass, they descend to the field. And I'm like, oh shit, all that was happening while they were still in their brooms, too. That seems very hard to be in a clump, but okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and
I'm trying to imagine, like, being on bikes and trying to do that.
And, I actually skipped past this because it was such a blink and you miss it thing, was, in the game, Malfoy, Crabbe Goyle, and...
Oh, yeah.
Was it Marcus Flint, I think, tried to distract Harry by dressing up as Dementors, and they walk out onto the field, and Harry just, sees this and instantly shoots a Patronus at them. And I think it might have actually been a corporeal one, and he just didn't really notice because he was focused on the snitch. It was not specified, but yeah.
Interesting. Because that becomes relevant later. But...
Yeah, but he does this, catches the thing, and then Lupin shows up, and he's like, "Did you see? I did it." And he's like, "Yeah, because those weren't real Dementors. They weren't actually interfering with your mood at all." And so we get to see McGonagall screaming at them, like, what a lowdown trick, etc. And something about this scene, just like we have. Oh, we won the big game. Oh, and the bullies got their immediate comeuppance. Things are really coming up Millhouse. Like, it's just this stupid little corny, high school movie moment where it's just like, everything's going great. And
yeah, in general, everybody's in a good mood as they head back to the dorm room. They're all celebrating, basically, into the fairly late at night. And I noticed at this point, I'm like, with, obviously from here on, pretty soon, things are going to get, more serious as we approach the climax of the book. And then not long into the next book, things are pretty kind of starting to get more dark and dire and serious as well. This might be one of the last, big high points of Harry's life for the rest of his time at school. If you think about it, he has little moments here and there, but in terms of just unadulterated joy, even with the Sirius Black stuff in the background, he's not really actually in any danger during this book, as it turns out.
I would say in the next book he succeeds pretty well at the dragon task and kind of lifts a lot of the everybody's kind of oh, you're not a real champion, and he kind of proves them wrong and everything. That was a good moment too, but this is definitely a high point. So they're kind of partying in the common room. McGonagall keeps coming in with a tartan nightgown or whatever, nightingale. Combining nightingale. It kind of makes me wonder where her room is, if it's in the common room or if it's somewhere else. But anyway,
I always assumed that. I just figured they had a room connected to their office, but probably not, because I imagine her classroom is far away from the tower. I don't know.
Not important, but also while it's going on, Hermione is trying to read the last 400 pages of this book that she needs to finish in the next couple days and is freaking out. And Harry's just like, "Come on, you can put that down. Take a night off." And she's just like, "No, we can't. I'm too busy." And then Ron takes a moment to very loudly kind of complain about her, so she runs off. And I'm surprised she was even out there in the first place. You'd think the noise would be distracting if you need to do this. But also, if you have to finish this book and you don't have enough time, you can literally go back, give yourself more time. But
that's true. Yeah. I think she wanted the excuse not to have to interact with Ron until he apologized. And Harry was even like, "Can you not lay off her a little?" And he's like, "No."
Yeah. So we have what I call a dream of insignificance, because at a point for a while we were tracking the significant dreams, and this one is just well,
we only had one. That's gonna be more later.
But it's Harry is chasing after something, and he has his broom, and it's some stupid shit. And then he wakes up to Ron screaming, and it's the dream had nothing to do with anything.
It's just an excuse to not end the chapter when he goes to sleep, and then have the
Ron starts screaming, and he's like, "I saw Sirius Black above my bed with a knife. He slashed the curtains." Nobody's believing him. They think it's a nightmare. He's going down, waking up the entire house. McGonagall comes in again. It's okay, what the hell is this shit? There's no way he could have gotten in here. The portrait wouldn't have let him in. And so they talk to Sir Cadogan. It's did you let him in? He's like, "Yeah." They're like, "Oh."
Specifically because he was he had the password. He had the whole week's passwords.
Yep, because...
And it's
because he kept writing, or he kept coming up with ridiculous passwords that Neville couldn't remember, and so he had them all written down and lost them. And
Yep.
Yep.
And
I just maybe this is dumb of me, but I always thought it was kind of just weirdly mundane that Sirius has a knife instead of like using his wand or whatever. Like, we know now that he's just trying to kill the rat, but like either way, like, the series is always kind of showing how wizards often rely on magic to kind of a stupid degree and consider everything else like below them. And it's funny to me that it's like, he's here to do this murder and he's going to do it with just a knife. So, okay. But I guess it works.
I mean, yeah. And this is probably a stupid question that gets answered soon. But I don't actually remember how Sirius gets away here, because obviously Ron screams as soon as he sees Sirius. And we know that you can't apparate within Hogwarts. So Sirius can't have done that. If he shapeshifted into a dog and ran away, people would have seen that too. Does this get answered later?
I don't actually think it does. He just kind of runs away, and I guess because everybody else is asleep, so he probably just gets out before anybody can catch him. I mean, he might have been a dog at the time, and even then, all the lights are out. I'm imagining, he's like, ah, and he's just runs out, and then everyone else is like, oh, what happened? And he's already gone. But
yeah, I guess so.
Don't know. But yeah, that's the end of the chapter, and I will take this point to interrupt and say that there were 2 instances of sassy Harry in these chapters. The second one may be a bit debatable, but the first one was when Malfoy first saw the Firebolt. He says something about you should install a parachute in it in case you have another fainting spell. And then Harry says, pity you can't attach an extra arm to yours, then it could catch the snitch for you. Honestly, a pretty good burn.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this one counts as sassy, but in the next chapter, we have the line, my dad didn't strut and neither do I. Would you count that?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I don't think Harry had the wherewithal to be sassy at that moment. He was just furious.
Yeah. He's more just, scared and angry, so maybe not. Definitely the first one, though.
It took me a second to figure out what the hell you meant by the first note in the
I knew that was going to be a thing, because, my first note for chapter 14 is, oh shit, it's Jafar.
And it's the chapter art, right?
Yeah, because Snape looks decidedly angular and, Middle Eastern or something.
He has, a little goatee like Jafar, right?
Yeah.
He looks like a Vizier. Yeah, we don't have the chapter art in ours, I don't know why. I think I mentioned that before. Okay, so since the incident with the common room, they've been upping security even more. It mentions that Flitwick was teaching the doors to recognize Sirius, and I know they mean the sentient painting doors, but it's still really funny.
Did they? It might actually just be the doors. Really? I could see it being either way, but I imagined it was just the doors.
Hang on.
I mean, I'll try to find it too. I don't know if it specifies.
Flitwick could be seen teaching the front doors to recognize a large picture of Sirius Black. Oh, yeah, no, I guess it is just the regular doors. Okay, yeah. That's really funny. He's just staring at these big wooden slabs, and he's just like, "Don't let this guy in." And the doors just do nothing because they're doors.
Well, I like to imagine they're just like, okay. But yeah, it also says that a bunch, in quotes, a bunch of security trolls were hired on as guards, patrolling the corridor leading up to the Gryffindor common room, which, first of all, I didn't actually realize that this thing was in a corridor. I thought it was I thought the painting was at the top of a staircase, but I don't know.
That's where it is in the movie, right? It's in the...
Because the thing is, the movie always shows that really tall staircase room with the moving
Yeah.
all around and the paintings
That's in
all
that's in
around.
the games as well.
I don't know if that was how it was originally intended to be, but yeah. Either way, though, I feel like even, we saw a troll in the first book, and I think just having one is already a little overkill. What do you mean you have a bunch of these guys? Like, damn.
Yeah. I mean, I pointed this out the first time because I'm like, how the hell did it get into the bathroom? Surely the door is too small for it. Same deal here. How are they getting around the castle? Like,
And I also liked the detail that they were comparing the size of each other's clubs. The trolls
Definitely
are very
not
stupid, and so I like to imagine them just going around like, oh, mine's bigger than yours. Just always forgetting. But
yeah.
So yeah, Ron is having a strange character moment here because something exciting happened to him. By which I mean he was potentially almost murdered, and so he is like, people want to listen to me now, and so he's like telling anybody who will listen about this story, and is kind of hamming it up a bit, and really enjoying this moment in the limelight, which is honestly just kind of a nice little character moment because that definitely does suit him, and we see a lot more of that in the next book when he gets really jealous over Harry, and I don't remember if it's really been talked about that much before.
No, I mean, we had the thing with the Mirror of Erised where his desire
right.
was to, like, be, head boy and the Quidditch captain and, this great, hero that everyone loves and respects.
Yeah, because he always just feels overshadowed. So, yeah, he kind of has his little moment here.
Yeah.
I like the part when Hagrid, they go to visit Hagrid, and he's like, oh, I bet he wants to hear my story. And then they meet up with him, and he's like, so you want to know what happened last night? And he's like, no, I already heard. He's like, oh.
Yeah, it's really funny. I just have a stupid fucking note here where it's just, I don't remember where the actual line is in the book, but it said something about, like, he looked at him and he looked at him, and it just reminded me of the Weird Al bit. It was, he looked at me, now look at him, and he looks at me.
Do we even know what this was in reference to? Because I don't.
No, I don't remember where it was.
Was it Ron saying, like, oh, I looked at Sirius and he looked back at me? Or,
probably, yeah.
So.
Yeah. I rolled over and I saw him standing over me like a skeleton with loads of filthy hair, holding this great long knife, must have been 12 inches. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and then I yelled, and he scarpered.
Yeah, Okay, so I have...
I think mine's actually missing a quote mark, like a closing quote mark here, I just realized after Ron says all
that. Actually, yeah, mine does too.
Huh.
Okay. Anyway, so I have a secret thing here. You're gonna you're gonna hate this. The first time
you've ever explicitly told me, like, don't look at this, and he shrank the fucking text.
Yeah, so I mean, you'll know why, because this is the... I wrote in here, this is the most pointless, unrelated tangent of all time. So if you remember way back to the first book, when I was like, why did Hagrid buy Harry ice cream? It's July, it totally would have melted. This puts that to shame. This is the most stupid fucking thing that I've ever gone through the effort of looking into. And it all starts with, right after the part that we were talking about, where Ron's telling the story. They're like, so Ron looks up, he screams, and then Sirius runs off. And he's like, but why? Why'd he run? And so we have Harry saying, he must have known he'd have a job getting back out of the castle once he'd yelled and woken people up. He'd have had to kill the whole house to get back through the portrait hole, blah, blah, blah. For some reason, I just noticed the word he'd've, HE''D''VE. And so I'm like, that's kind of an interesting word. Like, it's like a double contraction. It's one of those things where it sounds normal speaking it, but it's weird seeing it spelled out. And so I'm like, I'm wondering how many times this shows up in the entire series. And so I did a Control F throughout the set of PDFs to find out how many instances there are of blank apostrophe D apostrophe VE. There are 19. The earliest one was Chamber of Secrets. The last one was Half-Blood Prince, so we didn't have any in the first or last books. And here's the fun part, is they usually come in pairs. Because, like, this one here that Harry said, it's the only one Harry says in the whole series, by the way. But Ron had also said it a couple paragraphs earlier. And it'll usually be like, Hagrid will say it like twice in one conversation, and then never again for like a whole book. And so we have, of the 19 uses, 10 are from Hagrid, 7 from Ron, 1 from Harry, and strangely enough, 1 from Kingsley Shacklebolt. The more you know.
I got nothing.
I thought it was interesting, damn it.
I'm interested in the fact they come in pairs. That seems to imply to me that
she just would randomly think of using it, and then kind of forget about it again for a while. Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's see. There are 4 uses in Prisoner of Azkaban. I think the first 2 were when Hagrid was yelling about, like, you know, oh, I met Sirius back when, you know, right after Voldemort died, and, you know, I talked to him and I comforted him, and like, I'd wring his neck and stuff. He did it twice there. There's a few in Half-Blood Prince when he's like drunk and mourning Aragog. It's weird how it always just shows up in clumps. But yeah, right. I don't know. Anyway, that aside, immediately after I went through all the process of tracking this shit, I made a revelation because they're in the Great Hall, and, you know, Neville has been given detention and, like, all this other stuff because he left around the list of the passwords and everything, so he's in big trouble. And he gets a howler from his grandma, and the book describes it as a scarlet envelope. And I just kind of, it clicked, and I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. It's a scarlet letter, because the book The Scarlet Letter is all about, like, she has to wear a letter, like the letter A, to stand for adulterer, to shame her for the rest of her life. And this is a thing meant to shame people, and it's a fucking scarlet letter. Like, this had to be intentional. Like, I don't know.
I can't really comment because I haven't read the book, but that makes enough sense to me, yeah.
Yeah, as soon as I discovered this, I posted it on Reddit, and I didn't really get any major feedback on it, like, and that's surprising to me because this subreddit is fairly active, but, you know, it wasn't a thread of talking about whether or not Snape is a good person for the 800th time, so I guess they didn't care.
Or asking, like, well, Harry ate all the sweets in Philosopher's Stone on the train. Right. Well, none left for anyone else.
Let's see. Okay, well, I got 35 upvotes. That's not bad. So one person just said, this story just keeps on giving. And then we have, Rowling was an English lit major, so this would not be the first time she's put a
this very reference.
Deep, yeah, just a weird pun like this in her work. It's almost impossible for someone of her background to write the Ravenclaw quote, "Wit beyond measure was man's greatest treasure," and not have an awareness of what the word wit meant in Shakespearean slang. And then there's just other comments responding to this, and apparently it's a penis joke.
Huh. Interesting.
So anyway, last thing I have here is just, Neville has this howler, and he's immediately running out of the room with it just to minimize the damage. And it says that he's... I chopped the sentence off early for comedic effect, so this isn't how the sentence actually ends, but holding it before him like a bomb, sprinted out of the hall while the Slytherin table exploded. With laughter, but still.
And this just generated a stupid ass imagery, piece of stupid imagery in my brain of Neville, very rapidly fleeing the room, like not looking like he's sprinting, just walking, but the animation is just sped up, so he just does it in like, half a second
Yes.
with like cartoony sound effects, or like and then the Slytherin table starts laughing really loud, and it like peaks the audio, and then there's just a shitty cut off delta and explosion over the table.
That would be pretty good.
I need to have this animated.
I like that your brain generated a shitpost.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know what to tell you. That's how my brain works. Anyway.
So, anyway, okay, what the fuck were we talking about before he dove in the Scarlet Letter and shit? So yeah, they go to see Hagrid. He just kind of invites them over to his hut, and when they get there, Harry sees his hairy brown suit and horrible yellow and orange tie, and I fucking love this god-awful outfit that he has, because it shows up a couple more times in the future, and I especially love that it's
like his date with Maxime, right?
Yeah, I love that it's in the movie, too, because it looks horrible. And every time it shows up in the series, Harry just describes it as, like, his extremely horrible suit. So good. Shit. One of my favorite characters.
So Hagrid invites them in, and he serves them a bath bun.
Did you know what a bath bun was?
Nope.
Yeah, I looked him up. Yeah, he serves them bath buns, and they're just like, because usually his cooking is pretty bad. But I looked them up. They're very generic looking. Isn't
it just a bun with some sugar on it?
Yeah, I think it's it's what I would normally call like a dinner roll or something, except like even dinner roll I can see going a few ways, because there's the ones that are kind of firm, and then there's the ones that are like super like airy and squishy, and like the kind that you would get at like a buffet or something. And I'm kind of thinking of it as like that kind, except it just has like some of them have like raisins on top, and some of them are just like sugar or something. I don't know, but yeah, they look fine. They don't look particularly notable.
And Hagrid starts explaining to them that Hermione's actually been to see him quite a few times. This is where we get the revelation about, she's been helping to find material for the Buckbeak case. And Harry and Ron get this kind of pang of guilt for not having helped. He also mentions that, she's been distraught because there was the Firebolt situation, now the situation with the Scabbers, and she just wants to be able to be friends with them again and talk to them, but she's been really lonely. Which is probably made quite a bit worse by the artificial extension of time, now that I think about it.
Yeah. And didn't note it here, but yeah, I always just this part always kind of stood out to me a bit, is where Hagrid says, like, I thought your friend would mean more to you than a rat or a broomstick, and Ron's just being defensive, and he's like, but she won't hear anything about him, like he totally killed Scabbers, and he's just like, Hagrid's like, yeah, well, some people are kind of stupid about their pets, which coming from him is just, it's perfect, because I don't even think it's ironic. I think he's being he's being self-aware. He's like, take it from me. Like,
yeah, it's kind of interesting. Come to think of it, shit, maybe this is why Hermione didn't want to like use the time turner to do her homework at a separate time. Maybe she didn't want to, maybe she's not wanted to spend much more time in this situation. Maybe she's trying to minimize that.
Maybe.
I could kind of see that.
So yeah, I just generally feel really bad for Hermione here. It's like they go back to the school. There's a notice that there's a Hogsmeade thing coming up, and immediately they're just like, oh man, like Ron's like, oh, are you gonna sneak out again? And Hermione overhears this and is like, you better not, or I'm gonna tell her, tell McGonagall. And of course Ron's not having any of her shit, and they argue again. We fast forward to the next day, and Harry's making a big show of like, I'll be back here in the common room when you get back, Ron. And then he like immediately leaves and is gonna head to the secret passage.
He's the invisibility cloak this time.
Yeah, he's heading to the statue with the secret passage, and Neville shows up, and like, there's just this comedy of errors here. Like, I don't think that's the right term for it, but just the sequence that happens. It's like, it's like, oh, Harry, I didn't know you were still here, but that's right. You can't go to Hogsmeade, so we can hang out. You want to play like Exploding Snap? And he's like, no, I have to do an essay. He's like, oh, well, actually,
like,
I have to do the essay too. We can work on it together.
And he's like, oh, actually, I just remembered I did it yesterday. He's like, great, you can help me.
Yeah, it's like,
he just won't fuck off.
He's just Harry has to keep changing his story, and then eventually ends with Snape shows up and is questioning why they're there, and so they go back, and then it says like, Harry pretended that he accidentally left the essay in the library, and then just ditches Neville again. It's like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I mean, this whole scene exists as like a setup for later because it establishes Snape knowing that Harry was around this area and was suspicious of what he was doing.
Yeah, because it says that Snape is like kind of investigating the statue, and I don't know what he'd find, because apparently this thing only works if you say a very specific word to open it, but yeah. And the stupid thing is, like, they could have legitimately just bumped into each other there, but it just happened to be that is actually where the thing is.
Yeah. And so Harry eventually goes back. He climbs into the passage with his invisibility cloak and then makes his way to Hogsmeade. And it's mentioned actually that he had to go back because he left his bag. He got part way into getting into the thing because he threw his bag in first, and then Neville showed up.
Oh,
so even though it doesn't end up being like a problem after all, I would be so fucking stressed and panicked in between when I put my bag in there and when I needed to go get it. It might even put me off of going to Hogsmeade. It might, like, I'm not the type to actually sneak out and break rules in the first place, but if I was doing this, like, I might get cold feet. I might be like, that was too fucking close. I can't risk this.
Yeah, that's the other thing is, like, I'm gonna rant about this later on, don't worry, but just this whole thing about Harry sneaking out is really stupid in the first place. He absolutely should not be doing this. But then, like, this thing happens where, Neville won't leave him the fuck alone, Snape almost catches him and is investigating the area, and he still goes! Like, Jesus.
Yeah, it's not the first mistake he makes here, but it's one thing after the other that all adds up into getting him in serious trouble.
He's like, oh man, I gotta go and get those the frog spawn soap.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
I think we'll get to that now, because he gets there, okay, and he meets up with Ron and goes into the joke shop, and it's like the place is
codes.
Yeah, which for some reason I named a Magnazone after, but he's like goes into the shop and is having to avoid bumping into people, and he like is passing money to Ron under the invisibility cloak to buy stuff, and they bought like a bunch of really worthless shit.
Yeah,
and it's like they got a biting teacup and the frog spawn soap and like all this other crap, and all I could think of with this is this place would be great for a Goosebumps character, because if I learned anything from reading the reviews from Blogger Beware and watching Pop Arena's Goosebumps like review videos, for some reason, like every single character in these books has an interest in pranking. It's always the stupidest shit, where it's always just like people trying to scare each other in stupid ways. Like, oh, there's a worm in your spaghetti, and like just random shit like that. And it's like, this is not how kids act.
I also feel like I remember a lot of kids media being centered around like, here's some epic pranks you can do, and I was uninterested, and I didn't know anybody that was interested. At best, I think maybe I knew someone who had like one of those fake boxes of mints where you like pull it out and there's like a fake big bug inside, and you're like, and that's it. Like, no one I knew ever did like pranks. This has to have been like more of a thing in the 80s when people just had nothing better to do, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is, like, I always sound like I'm like, I don't know what you'd call it, like, I'm trying to think of a good word for it, like, but yeah, it's just, being born in the age of video games, I feel, privileged to have entertainment of that caliber.
Yeah.
And so I always
fucking know
picture
what people did
anybody.
before
Hmm?
I don't fucking know what people did before that. I guess they had to prank each other and go exploring in the woods and fucking die.
They go out, find dead bodies, poke them with a stick. Yeah, just that type of shit. Throw rocks at cars. I don't know. I mean, that's always the thing. Is like I'll just read stories about people who grew up in the 80s or whatever. It's like you lived outside. You as soon as you got done with school, you would take your bike and just go out and fuck around with your friends until like 8 o'clock, and it's like I don't know what they're doing, but found something to do. But
Harry is evidently very interested in this stuff because he instructs Ron about what he wants, and they get a whole bunch of shit between them.
But so they're like they go there. They're wandering around a few other places. They eventually go to check out the Shrieking Shack, and Malfoy shows up, and he does his one thing, which is just let me be an ass.
Yeah.
And so he's just like, oh man, this place must be a step up for what the place you're used to living in, huh, Weasley? And then I don't even remember why Hagrid gets brought up.
He's talking about the hearing that Hagrid's at.
Oh right.
And he's like, I made sure my father told them that I couldn't use my arm for 3 months. And Crabbe and Goyle start laughing.
But yeah, there's a point where he's doing an impression of Hagrid, and his impression involves pronouncing honest as apostrophe ONEST, which is not pronounced different at all. So I don't know how he did that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get it.
But as he's there being a jackass, I guess
Ron starts to get mad and is gonna step up to them, but Harry, pokes it, grabs him by the back of the robes and whispers, I'll take care of this.
Yeah, and so this is, I guess, Harry's moment to prove himself as a prankster, because apparently that's what he is now. And so he just chucks a bunch of mud at them and shit. And for a while, I was actually wondering if he was grabbing it through the cloak, and if so, if that would just leave a floating stain in midair. But nah, he apparently he grabbed it with his hands, and somehow that wasn't visible. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's questionable.
But
I
like the part where
I have to question if Ron was just standing there staring at Malfoy silently, because Malfoy goes on for quite a while between when Harry's like, let me take care of this, and when he starts throwing mud at them and fucking with them. And it doesn't mention Ron saying anything. So I'm just imagining him just standing there glaring at Malfoy, not saying anything or reacting at all.
Yeah, maybe. But I this is such a stupid thing, because no one would notice this unless they've read these books way too many times. But I love the part where Harry it says he forces Crabbe to do a little pirouette somehow by getting behind him and hitting him or something. And it just reminded me of the stupid little twirl that Harry does on his broom in the second book, the thing that leads to the training for the ballet, Potter. I always loved the phrase "stupid little twirl."
Yes. And related to this, is it to Crabbe or to Goyle? I think it's probably Goyle.
They're the same fucking character.
Yeah. He gets him with some mud, and it mentions that they start hopping to get gunk out of their eyes. I'm like, what do you mean hopping? How does that help?
Yeah, I don't know.
Anyway, so
yeah, this continues for a while. Various antics occur, and then they slip on the cloak, and Harry's head gets exposed, and so
yeah, he tries tripping.
Malfoy is like, "Ah!" and then runs off. And so
he sprints off, and as we find out soon, he evidently just went directly back to Hogwarts to immediately go tell on him.
I mean,
yeah, it's just funny that now this is immediately a race to get back.
Yeah, and so Harry, of course, has to fucking sprint to Honeydukes, get into the trapdoor, go through this passageway, which apparently takes an hour.
Yeah,
and
it's
he's like
crazy.
running the entire time, gets out of the statue panting, like completely sweaty, face red, mom spaghetti, etc. He's got mud on his hands, big
I,
disgrace,
sure,
kicking your can all over
sure.
the place.
God damn it!
Um,
Surely at some point on the way back, he could have like wiped his hands on something,
I don't
or
know,
like
but
used a spell to clean his hand. I don't know.
probably. But
But
yeah, he
so
climbs
he
out. And,
fucks up here because he has at least a little bit of time to try to figure something out, but he doesn't. He just monkey brain, doesn't think, runs straight back. One climbs out of the portrait hole without his invisibility cloak on, which, to be fair, if the hump started moving, like, and if somebody was right there, then that wouldn't have helped that much. But even still, he doesn't even try. He crawls out, like, without it, and this fucks him up. I don't even know if Snape sees him coming out of the hole or if he just sees him nearby.
I think. Well, no, I don't think he sees him coming out of the hole because, to my knowledge, they still don't know about this passageway
Yeah,
afterward.
that's the thing.
So it's
if
just
he had the invisibility
he
cloak
gets
on, he would've
out
been
and
fine.
then just he immediately gets caught by Snape, and it leads to
there's another mistake that he made, but I'll get to that in a minute.
Okay, but yeah, this whole next scene is it's equal parts like really hard to read for me at least, and also like actually good character moments and kind of progressing some backstory. So I have very mixed feelings on this section, but do you want to talk about it at all, or should I? I feel like I've been kind of saying most of the stuff here.
I mean, we basically get an exchange with Harry and Snape that starts with just talking about what he's been up to, and Snape's interrogating him, like, Malfoy came to me with an interesting story, and he says you did this and did this, and Harry's denying it. And Snape very quickly gets into just, you're full of shit, you're an asshole, you're just like your dad, fuck you. And Harry immediately gets really mad,
yeah.
and starts defending his dad, and is even like, he pulls out what he thinks is his trump card, because he's like, Dumbledore told me, I actually don't think it says Dumbledore, but he's like, I know the truth, I know that my dad saved your life. He's like, oh, that's what you heard, is it? Here's the fucking truth, if you want the truth.
Yeah, and so we still don't get the full story here, but we learned in the first book, Dumbledore says that the reason Snape hates you is because you remind him of your dad, and he hated your dad because he saved Snape's life. And Harry's like, what? And and so he doesn't get any further info than that. And here he's just like, yes, he did, but only after he put me in the danger in the first place, and the only reason he did was to save himself. And
because he was pranking him. It all comes full circle.
Oh shit, it does. We know where Harry got it from.
Yeah.
I mean, he's one of the Marauders. So, jeez.
Yeah.
But anyway.
And I actually forgot about this scene, because I don't think this, like, Harry getting caught for going to Hogsmeade thing is in the movie, right? Like, there is the scene of him fucking with Malfoy, but Malfoy just runs off and nothing comes of it.
Right, because that leads to the weird scene of Harry, like, fiddling with the little dangling bits on Ron's hat. Like, Ron doesn't even know that Harry's there, but Hermione does, because she's there and not mad at them at this point, and I don't know.
Yeah, and then they go to isn't it only at this point that they go to the Three Broomsticks and Harry finds out about Sirius having supposedly killed his parents, which happened a few chapters ago in the book.
Yeah, they reordered some events, because then we've got the scene where Harry, like, sees Peter scampering through the halls and runs into Snape in the middle of the night. And
yes, yeah, and that leads to Snape, like, interrogating him about.
Yeah, so they kind of rewrite some of that.
And also, I don't think there's the scene of Ron being scared awake by Sirius slashing his curtains. That doesn't happen in the movie either.
Yeah, I don't think we see that.
Huh, they changed a lot of stuff from around here.
Anyway. But yeah, so Snape says, like, empty your pockets, and he's got all this stupid prank shit from Zonkos, and he's...
This is the other mistake. He should have left that stuff with Ron, because then if Ron had all this stuff, like, that's not really suspicious. He could have even said, like, Harry gave me some money, told me to get some stuff from Zonkos. That's not against the rules. They could have totally done that. But Harry rushed off before he could think to do it. He gets caught with the stuff on him.
Yeah, and so Snape's, of course, not buying his shit, because, like, Harry is very obviously lying here, but it's... I guess he needs, like, definite proof or whatever. And so then he pulls out the Marauders map, which just looks like an old shitty piece of parchment, and so Snape is poking at it, trying to get it to work. And if you remember when the map first showed up, I kind of talked about this a bit, how I feel like this thing is not, like, I don't want to use the word programmed because it's magic, but it's like, it's not necessarily meant to respond to specific phrases as much as it is like it's kind of imbued with the personalities of the Marauders, and they're just sort of responding
Maybe.
the way that they would, the way that like portraits work.
I'm not sure about that. That would track more, I guess, with yeah, like you said, stuff like the portraits. But I always interpreted this thing as having essentially programming. Like I don't see, like, obviously I don't think it's lines of code, but I think that you can, in some way, when magically crafting something, like put in specific, like, okay, and if this happens, then respond in this way. Like I don't really see why that
Yeah,
wouldn't be
but the thing
possible.
is, so the reason that I'm pointing this out is because of your note here about.
I know.
Do you want to read it or?
Yeah, because well, for one thing, just on the way there, Snape, when he's trying to get the map to, respond to him, he's like, Professor Snape, master of this school, commands you to reveal your secrets. And I'm like, what do you mean, master of this school?
I mean, I
You're
think
not
he's
the
just
headmaster.
bluffing.
I guess. Fair enough. But so the map responds specifically from the Messrs. Mooney, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs. Each giving snarky responses to Professor Snape. And one of them specifically, I think it's Padfoot, says like they're surprised that such an idiot as Snape was even able to become a professor. And that to me implies that they did program this thing for the outcome of Snape somehow getting a hold of it after becoming a professor. Which
To me, I feel like it shows more the opposite. It's way more likely to me that it just, their personalities or whatever, like, rubbed off on it, or like it was charmed with them or whatever. And so because they hate Snape, the map is just like, oh, Snape's a teacher? Well, shit, okay, let me, make a joke out of this now. Instead
I
of them
guess.
just, trying to predict, oh, in case this happens, let me put in this line. Like,
Honestly, that's funnier to me though, because I like the idea that they anticipated this possibility, knowing they're not going to be around for that. They're not going to be at school anymore. This is going to be years from now, and this map might find its way into the hands of somebody else. Maybe their kids, maybe somebody else. I just like the idea that they programmed this in as like a really long con joke, because that's just hilarious to me. That sounds like some shit I would do.
yeah. I mean,
Shout
that.
out to the time that I was in the Friday stream while I was over at you guys' place, and purely because somebody in the chat was like, "I'm pretty sure Autumn's gone home by now." I was like, "Well, I guess I'm not here," and then I just didn't speak for a whole hour. Like,
God.
this is some shit I would do.
Yeah. I mean, planning things out to such detail like that is funny, but yeah,
You're probably right.
I'm sticking to my theory. um, so the thing is, Snape he doesn't know that this is a map yet, but he pulls it out and he's just like, okay, there's no way you're carrying around this old piece of parchment, especially after I try to burn it and you're reacting so harshly. So clearly this is something important to you. I'm gonna figure out what it is. And
On that note, I don't know if burning it would work. Maybe I'm probably just carrying this over from like D&D, but I have like in that system, or at least in 5e, you can't like damage magical items with mundane means. Like you can't burn or break a magic item unless it's magic. And I kind of like assume, I guess there's no real reason to, but I just figure like there's no way fire would just destroy this. Like surely you need to get past it somehow.
I don't know, because I mean it's obviously different from D&D magic, but I'm sure there could be like fire repellent charms applied to things. The question is, would it still like how effective would it be, and would it still work after like 30 years? But
Yeah. I just assume for something as fragile as paper being the medium of this, device that can essentially, change its shape and reform what's on it and open out far beyond the actual size of the parchment. Like, I would assume that it has some kind of protections on it, but
Yeah,
not
possibly.
sure. Anyway, sorry, go on.
So yeah, Snape is he's prodding it, and he's like, reveal your secrets. I demand to know what you are, or whatever. And then, of course, it says the whole Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, Prongs thing, and Snape knows exactly who these people are. And so this is the moment where this goes from I've busted Harry from sneaking out, and I'm gonna take every advantage of this and get him expelled because I hate Harry, into like, oh fuck, how deep does this go? And, Lupin's here at the school, so he immediately calls Lupin and is like, so, I found this. Know anything about this? And Lupin has the fucking audacity to, just straight up be like, no, this is a Zonko's product, I'm sure, and it's just insulting whoever, and it's amazing because both of them know what it is, and both of them know that the other one knows what it is, but he's still just trying to be bluff his way out of this, and it's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and it's funny because Snape is kind of putting on airs too, because he's like, This paper is clearly imbued with dark magic. What's your opinion, Lupin? How did Harry come upon such a dark artifact? And he's like, no, this isn't dark magic. This is a prank product.
Well, and he says, isn't it more likely he got it directly from the manufacturers? And Harry catches on to this and questions it later, and Lupin's just like, oh, yeah, I knew them. Kind of a reverse Obi-Wan, heard of him, he's me. But so while all this is happening, Lupin is just like, I'm sure he probably got this from Zonko's, and then Ron, with perfect timing, bursts the doors down, and he's like, I gave Harry all that stuff, bought it at Zonko's. And he's like, there we go, okay, let's go. He tries to usher them out before Snape can argue any further.
Yeah. It's interesting because Harry does Harry get in trouble for this? Beyond obviously Lupin's going to tell him off. We'll get to that. Does he get detention? I can't remember.
I don't think he does, which is kind of incredible because Snape very clearly had him cornered here.
I guess it's because Snape couldn't pin anything on him in the end.
Yeah, but
I mean the real punishment here wouldn't have been detention. He's already got the maximum consequences basically in. Well, I guess other than being expelled, but Lupin saying he was disappointed in him is already punishment enough. But
I questioned how Ron just knew to show up at Snape's office and immediately give a cover story for the stuff. But
I have a note here, which is I don't really see the issue. There's two factors here, which is one, how did he know to go to Snape's office? And to that, I would say. I actually looked up where the One-Eyed Witch statue is. It's on the 3rd floor corridor of the defense tower, which I don't know exactly where the defense tower is in relation to the dungeons, but at the very least, they would have had to go down 3 floors to the ground floor and then travel some ways out of the tower to another building and then down into the dungeons. I think it's pretty likely that a few people would have seen this by now, and if they see Harry walking to the dungeons with Snape looking the way he does, they can probably figure out that he's in trouble, and rumors spread fast. So I imagine probably the school knows that they don't know the details, but they probably know Harry is in trouble, or at least had some kind of encounter with Snape. And
I will raise the counterpoint that the school is probably mostly empty because everyone's at Hogsmeade, but yeah, fair enough.
I don't know if it's mostly, because the 3rd years tend to go, and then some of the older years. But both first years and second years don't go at all.
True.
And a lot of the older students probably are like, I've been before. They're not going every weekend. So
if this was still book 2, I'm sure Colin would have showed up and taken a picture of it happening.
God. So there's that. I think it's reasonable enough for Ron to have asked around and found out. Especially some time has passed here. Ron got back quite a while after Malfoy. There's a time gap there during which maybe he was asking around. As for knowing to say, "Oh, I gave Harry that stuff," like Ron also, again, on the way back,
he realized that
Ron would have taken the train, probably, right? They take the train to Hogsmeade.
I think it's carriages
or carriages. Okay, he would have had time to sit and think, and he probably would have been like, what can I do to help this situation? What can I say? And would have realized that Harry has his stuff on him. I would have been like, shit, I need to cover for that. I guess I'll say that I gave it to him. He's not talking about the Marauder's map. He's probably just talking about the Zonko stuff.
Yeah. Fair enough.
So there.
Okay, so here's my big... I can't call it a rant, but just kind of me vomiting words about this scene. Because, after Lupin kind of ushers them out, he's like, I don't have the exact words in front of me, but he's just like, look, I wanted to, save you from Snape, but, I want you to also recognize the severity of what you did here. Like, we're trying to keep you safe, and you're doing this shit. And the thing he says is, your parents gave their lives to keep you alive. A poor way to repay them, gambling their sacrifice for a bag of magic tricks. And to me, that is like legitimately one of the most hard-hitting lines in the whole series, like even more than some of the character deaths. It's like, I read that as just devastating, because
we've been establishing that Harry really likes Lupin and looks up to him and sees him as kind of like a father figure during this book, at least.
Because for one thing, a lot of it is just the way that I respond to things personally. I can't stand it when I'm in trouble, or like if I've let somebody down, anything like that. And here it is, somebody he respects, and it's something, he's right. And Harry's been spending this year hearing his, dead mother screaming, and here he's just, putting that aside because I just want to, I want to go out and have fun. It's not fair that they're locking me up. And it's like, well, there's a good reason for it, and you fucked up, and what did you do it for? You did it for, some stupid tat from Zonko's. And it's like, damn.
Yeah.
And the thing is
it
that...
makes sense.
Because Harry's 13, he's not thinking about that. It's like, it's not fair. I want to go to the thing and have fun, and, everything's going to be fine. The place is secure or whatever, but, everybody just kind of has his best interests, in heart anyway, and he's just defying
Except for
this.
Ron, who's also just on the same wavelength as him, is like,
right.
Yeah, it's not fair. You should have fun with us.
And, this happens other times too, like in the last book, they steal the car when if they had stopped for 5 minutes to think about the situation, they could have come up with a million better ideas, but they're kids, they're dumb. Like,
that was at least panic out of a situation that was, not caused by them and wasn't in their control. Here, Harry made the active decision to do this here and put himself at risk.
Yeah. And the other thing is just the scene of Harry being cornered by Snape and is completely guilty, and everything that he's being asked, he basically cannot come up with like a good lie for. He just has to put his foot down and just be like, nope.
It wasn't me.
Nope. This thing that you're accusing me of that everything is pointing towards, nah, it didn't happen. And that shit is the fucking worst, because I don't like lying, and there's been times where I've done that because I had to quickly decide which is the better outcome, me trying to get away with this and the chance of it succeeding, or me just admitting up front that there was a problem. And it's the fucking worst. Like,
yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's just because it's in your head, like, they're not fucking buying this, but it's just, what do you do? And so it's like earlier in the chapter we had the secondhand guilt when Harry and Ron realized that they had way more free time than Hermione did, but still were not helping with the Buckbeak case while she was. It's like, ugh. Mm-hmm. Like, that's also shitty, is just realizing, like, you forgot about this thing, but the other person who is more responsible didn't forget and is, putting in way more effort. It's like, goddamn, like this chapter is just unpleasant. But
yeah, and it's gonna end on an even worse note as well. But yeah, it's very sudden. It's a very it's not sudden because it took a whole chapter, but it's a very wide swing from the high of last chapter, with the Quidditch match, all the way back around to like everything sucks.
yeah, and the thing is, it's just an emotional shift because, nobody died, nobody got hurt. Harry didn't even get detention, I don't think. Like, there's no real punishment here other than just the... It's the classic, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed. And it's, it hits very close, I think, is the best way to put it.
And I mean, I've often heard it said about storytelling, like emotional stakes are often kind of more resonant and more powerful than other stuff. Like if the stakes are like, if we don't stop this, the world is gonna end. Like, okay, well, the world's not gonna end. Like, they're gonna save the day. But if it's, like something like this where it's all to do with relationships between characters, like that gets you more invested and more like worried about what's gonna happen, because it could legitimately end up with like, this kind of thing happening where somebody's upset with somebody and it just damages their relationship in that way.
Yeah. And I didn't even necessarily think about this aspect of it, but because I've said before that Lupin is one of those characters that is kind of like a fan favorite, but I never really saw him that way personally. I don't really think about things from his perspective that often. But if you do take a second here, you're realizing now, like, Lupin has had many years to grow out of his, teenage self, when even then he was kind of one of the more level-headed of the group. He wasn't the one pulling the pranks. He was just kind of letting them happen. And it's like, he's grown out of that, grown as a person, and now he's seeing his friend's son turning into James and doing this stupid shit, and he's just like...
After he's already lost James.
Yeah, and it's...
one of his other friends betraying him.
Yeah, you can see how... You can see how he would just be really disappointed and like, please don't turn into this.
Yeah. Yeah. Very, very resonant. Not sure what else we can add.
Yeah, and that was where the chapter ended, so.
Pretty much. Like, they get back to the common room, their heads low, they're at the bottom, they're at rock bottom, and then Hermione's there, and they're like, oh, great, you told to McGonagall, didn't you? Go on there and tell, and she's like, no, I got a letter from Hagrid. He lost his case, Buckbeak's gonna be executed.
Oh, right, I forgot that we got that, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, we get another fucking gut punch at the end.
Yeah, and it leaves us off there. Very I guess this is the darkest hour of the book. We have, maybe not. We do have some more dire, like, actual kind of urgent matters that come up.
Yeah, we get up to the
chapters,
action stuff later. Well,
emotionally, this is the low point.
Yeah, well, we get a lot of... I said action, we also get like a whole chapter of talking and exposition, but...
Yeah. So yeah, next time is apparently the Quidditch final. Apparently, I don't really remember what happens in that.
Some Quidditch, I assume.
I have to assume there's something else there too.
Professor Trelawney's prediction. Okay, well, that definitely starts off the final act.
Yeah. So still got one more of these before we kind of lead into the finale, but few more of these. All in all, I think the next time is just build up. As for comments,
did anyone call us bitch asses?
No.
I will do it for them then. Okay, so yeah, we looked at the comments, and there were some, and there was one long one with a lot of things to point out that we just kind of determined there isn't really much to respond to. So
it's good points, and it was interesting to see. I just don't know if I have any like.
Yeah, there's not much we can really say back to it. It's just so.
I don't appreciate whenever people leave these kind of comments engaging with what we're talking about. It's nice to see that,
Yeah, I do. That's the thing, is I I do like reading them, knowing that people are watching. But
The, the
yeah,
one the
just
one that was
kind of.
interesting here that I did want to bring up is that considering how much longer Hermione's year would be for considering the time turner usage, they wonder how much older Hermione is compared to everyone else. Probably not, that much, but they wonder if she ever had to like circle back and hit up lunch for a second time. Um, and they want, it's like if she ever had to do that, does she have like her own like little special section of the lunchroom, or like probably it would be like Potter McGonagall's office or something, where she's just at a table
I wonder
eating with
how it.
other versions of herself.
Wonder how it affects her sleep schedule too.
Yeah, that would be really hard to figure out. That is a good point though. She probably is a little older than she actually is as a result.
Yeah, and she's already one of the oldest ones in the year anyway.
hmm but yeah, thanks for all the comments. Thanks for the patience again. It's been a couple months since the last one. We'll try to
Yeah,
get these out a bit more frequently.
as always. Yeah, we'll try to. It just kind of depends on what we have that we're working on.
hmm So see you next time for the Quidditch final and Professor Trelawney's prediction.